Chloe Tilley and Callum MacDonald on Times Radio Breakfast.
Good morning, it's Friday morning, it is 10 to 9. Now, US military personnel have begun moving aid into Gaza using a makeshift pier off the territory's coastline. It comes as South Africa opens a case at the International Court of Justice asking judges to order an immediate halt to Israel's incursion in Rafah. Well, let's get an Israeli perspective now with government spokesperson David Mencer. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Chloe.
First of all, let's talk about this pier, which has now been built by US forces off Gaza. Is the Israeli government going to be working with the likes of the UN to make sure that aid can safely be distributed and got to the areas where it's desperately needed in Gaza?
So thank you for having me on. Yes, of course, we're trying to get as much aid as we possibly can into Gaza. Our fight, of course, is not with ordinary Gazans, but it's with Hamas, the terrorist organization of Hamas itself. I would say about the UN, I know in the UK that there's this aura about the UN and how wonderful they are. The truth is they are hopelessly inefficient in getting aid around the area. So look, we'll work with whoever does a good job. But the recent record of the UN has been hopelessly inefficient. Just this week, unfortunately, we released video footage of Hamas gunmen inside a UN facility firing at Palestinian civilians. So look, I know.
But to be fair, the UN clarified that they had been told by the Israeli military that they had to move out of that warehouse for their own safety. So it wasn't being occupied or indeed run by the UN at that point. It was an empty building that Hamas had decided to take over.
So, Chloe, let me. That simply doesn't bear any relation to the truth. This is a UN facility, the main facility by which to get aid, the aid depot to get aid to ordinary Gazans inside Rafah, which is what we're trying to do, get them as much aid as we possibly can. There were Hamas gunmen inside the warehouses, inside the compound, and they were firing at Gazan civilians. So.
So you didn't. So this is really useful. No, it's useful sorry, forgive me. There's a slight delay on the line. So this is really useful. So you're saying that the UN are lying. They weren't told by the Israeli military to leave that warehouse.
So the UN have unfortunately been shown, and UNRWA in particular, have been shown to be hand in hand with Hamas. We've proven that many, many times. And this video was just another classic example of that.
But to be clear, did you ask the UN, were the UN told to leave this warehouse? Because that's what they say they were told. They say they were told by the Israeli military to leave. You're saying that didn't happen, just for clarity. Yeah,
just for clarity. I have no information about the UN being told to leave that warehouse. It's an UNRWA warehouse. It's an UNRWA storage depot for aid. We've got as much aid as we can in there because we want it to be distributed to ordinary Gazans, not to Hamas.
But to be fair, if you don't know whether they were told to leave or not, it's very difficult to really say whether the UN are lying or not. Let's move on. I want to ask you as well.
I want to move on, Chloe, because this is an important point, because we've released lots and lots of evidence of the UN and UNRWA in particular working hand in hand with Hamas, and that cannot be acceptable. So yes, of course, there must be better solutions to getting aid to ordinary Gazans, and UNRWA, unfortunately, are perpetuating this conflict by working hand in hand with Hamas. And so if we want to get more aid to Gazans, then it's probably not going to be the best idea to use UNRWA.
OK, I mean, that is something that the UN disputes. And obviously, it's very difficult for journalists to verify because you won't allow any journalists to go into Gaza. So we are having to get information from people who are on the ground rather than being able to send our own people in to obviously see with their own eyes what is going on. I just wanted to talk to you about...
What do I do with that point then, Chloe, before you move on? Because you've made that sort of drive-by shooting, and I'd like to deal with that point.
Gosh, that's an accusation.
Well, because you can't make an accusation to me, then move on to the next point without giving me an opportunity.
Oh, so you will let journalists go into Gaza, will you?
So let me tell you what's going on. This is probably one of the most reported conflicts ever in the history of mankind. News is getting out of Gaza. There are lots of local journalists who are putting the story out. The first thing that we want to get out of Gaza is, of course, our hostages. And we will do nothing, and I repeat, nothing to harm them or our soldiers who are fighting in a very, very dangerous environment. It's a war zone. It's a very active war zone. Hamas are using schools, mosques, hospitals to fire from. It's a very, very dangerous place. We would love to allow more journalists in there, and they will be in good time. And don't forget, many journalists have been allowed have been taken in to see the tunnels. That's happened many, many times. So this.
And you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Those journalists have been taken in. You're absolutely right. But they're always escorted by the Israeli military. They're not able to move around safely by themselves. And I understand what you're saying. You're saying it's not safe for journalists to be in there. I'm just saying, as a statement of fact, journalists are not able to operate in there independently at the moment. Therefore, we are reliant on people who are inside to tell us. That's all I want to say. I just want to move on. Perception is a powerful thing, and you're well aware of this, but just for the sake of our audience, I'm just going to outline these things. Clearly, horrendous attacks carried out by Hamas on October the 7th, and many world leaders standing with Israel saying you've absolutely got a right to defend yourselves. But since then, the US has said it won't sell weapons to Israel that could be used in an all-out assault on Rafah, concern for the million civilians there. The UN's most senior human rights official has said it is the plausible case that Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war in Gaza. And South Africa is saying that Israel's military actions in Rafah are genocidal and threaten the very survival of Palestinians. Now, once again, it's perception. It's not the reality that you see. It is a perception that other people have. But do you worry how the world is viewing Israel's actions?
So I tell you what I worry about, Chloe. It's our Israeli communities just meters away from Hamas. And what Hamas tell us is that if they're not destroyed, if they're not completely eviscerated from Gaza, that they will repeat the October 7th massacre again and again and again. So Gaza, and the Hamas threat is not a faraway land of which we know little. It's easy to sit in New York or in London or in any other capitals of the world and pontificate about the dangers we're facing here. But we faced a genocidal terrorist army, and they're very clear about what they want to do. They want to stay in power. They want to regroup. And what they say, and we're listening to them now, Chloe. If we haven't in the past, we're certainly listening to them now. They tell us that they want to do October the 7th again and again and again. And just as in the UK, the government's primary responsibility is to take care of its own people, our own security, which is why there is wall-to-wall support here in Israel to finish the job. We don't want any more harm to come to Gazan civilians, but we feel we are liberating Gaza from Hamas to build a better future, a more sustainable future, a better future for Gaza as well, because they're not going anywhere and we are not going anywhere. So we need to live together in peace. But the first step in that journey is getting rid of Hamas.
Of course, it's worth pointing out as well, there are some people in Israel who want a ceasefire as well, which I think is important to point out. Thank you so much for your time. That is David Mencer, who is an Israeli government spokesperson.